Coming right up, the last two gyms, and first we're gonna have to deal with the Fire Gym featuring Blaine. And yeah, you've probably noticed in the Pokémon Mansion, but I have absolutely nothing on my team that's super effective against fire. No water, no ground, no rock. Now, on a competitive team today, that would be completely unthinkable! Nothing strong against rock. But this, nothing strong against fire, I mean. Though nothing strong against rock would be equally unthinkable. But this is in-game in the first generation, so I suppose we're gonna let it slide. Now, I think I've already said what I was gonna do. In this gym, I'm going to get the questions wrong on purpose so that I can both show you the questions and fight the trainers. You better take some burn heals. Well, it's not like burn heals are essential to this place. Will-O-Wisp didn't exist back then, so the only source of burns was hacks on moves like Flamethrower or Ember or Fire Blast, and that's like 10%. Now, the most notorious thing about this gym is the trap question. Caterpie evolves into Butterfree, yes or no? Well, the correct answer is yes, because it eventually turns into Butterfree. But it doesn't evolve into Butterfree directly, so a lot of people got it wrong when you could technically say it's right either way. So if I remember correctly, they fixed it in, and there's the question. So yeah, I think they fixed it in Fire Red and Leaf Green, and the question turned into Caterpie evolves into Metapod. So yeah, now everyone was happy. But you know what this question reminds me of? In Tales of Symphonia, you know when Genis takes that test in Palmacosta? There are two questions that are just as tricky as this one. One of them was, what was the gravity constant of 9.8 that Genis mentioned in the Ossa Trail after Sheena fell down that hole? And yeah, he only says it's a gravity constant. But now you're asked what that gravity constant of 9.8 actually represents from a physical standpoint. And you couldn't get this question right unless either you got lucky or you followed a physics course. Fortunately, I did follow a physics course, so I knew all about the gravity constant of 9.8. Odd that it should be the same on Earth and in Silverant, by the way. But yeah, second trap question. Where was Lloyd born? Three choices. Dirk's house, Iselia, and I don't know. Wait, what? My Gengar's Thunderbolt wasn't enough to take down a level 36 Ninetales? Wow, I did not expect that one, and that is definitely going to mean trouble for Gengar in the Elite Four. So that means if I'm going to send Gengar, I'll probably have to send everything it sees to sleep with Hypnosis. And didn't it take a while for the door to open? I think it took like a few seconds and I couldn't move or talk to anyone. But back to that question about Lloyd Irving's birthplace. Three answers, including I don't know. The correct answer is I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen anything ever where the correct answer was I don't know. But it's true, you simply don't know. It's never established in the game where Lloyd was born, and it's just a minor detail either. No one cares about that. But what one might actually care about as far as this test is concerned is that if you get those two questions wrong, the third one's pretty easy actually, Genis's affection for you will actually go down 1 point. The deal with that test is that Genis's affection increases by 3 points if you take the test. But then for each wrong answer, it goes down by 2 points. So you get those two questions wrong, Genis's affection for Lloyd goes down by 1 point. Which, technically, it's good news if you want to get all items, because Genis doesn't give you an item during the Night of Flanor. You only get an item for Colette, Kratos, or Zelos. And Kratos is a choice every time, so you just have to try and get Colette to like you, very easy, and Zelos to like you, much, much harder. It might take several playthroughs for you to get it right. Okay, it's almost time for the next question. And I think that trainer there was completely optional. There wasn't even a question attached to him. So first I'm gonna change lead to Alakazam, since, well, it's hazardous to keep Articuno out in a fire gym. I could run into a Ninetales or an Arcanine or something. Okay, I don't need to read through that again. Just give me the question, I already know that! Come on! Okay, 9 certified Pokemon League badges? No, which means I'm gonna answer yes. Bad call? Okay, bring it on! Anyway, those quiz things come back in later Pokemon games. For example, there's one variant of the Trick House in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald that has such questions, and they're actually pretty tough questions if you don't know every last detail of the game. Like, you're asked about the pricing of items and things like that, like, is this supposed to be the Price is Right or something? But there's not only pricing questions, there's really all sorts of questions, and they're actually fairly difficult. Say what you will about that generation, but I really enjoyed the Trick House in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And they're in Diamond and Pearl, not Platinum, I think. Just Diamond and Pearl. You've got really simple arithmetic questions in Fantina's gym, and those are really easy, like 7 plus 2 equal what? What the hell? We're a far cry away from does Caterpie evolve into Butterfree? So thank God they did away with that in Platinum. And speaking of Platinum, some breaking news. Just before I made this video, I went on Cerebi, and, sorry, 2 of the Rotom forms are actually changing names. So Cut Rotom, the lawnmower, is now known as Mow Rotom, and Spin Rotom is now Fan Rotom. Now, where it gets interesting is that before now, Rotom F referred to the Frost form, but now there are 2 forms that begin with F, so what are we gonna do? Okay, question, Poliwag evolves 3 times. Nope, nothing does after 13 years of this series existing, and hopefully that never changes, even though there are a few 3rd forms that could really use an evolution, like Wigglytuff and Pidgeot and the level 10 birds, but those are only 6 Pokemon. Compare that to all the 3rd forms that are already excellent, and that could potentially evolve, but then completely wreck the game's balance. Could you imagine if Blissey evolved? Ugh, just thinking about it makes me sick. But yeah, back to Rotom. Now there are 2 forms that begin with F, so how are we going to be abbreviating those form names? That's certainly something to be curious about, and I am going to follow that and give you news as they come in. Okay, time for the next question, which is, are Thunder moves effective against ground element types? So, of course, no, which means yes. Well, I imagine if you remember, aim for the horn! Which, ironically, that Rhydon was owned by Blaine, then if you aim for the horn, maybe it can be effective. Well, who am I kidding? Of course it's not. And speaking, I mentioned just now that I would stay on top of the news and bring them to you as they come. Well, I've said it before, for, you know, the possibility of an event in Explorers of Time and Darkness in order to get the Mewtwo and Celebi in the opposite versions. Well, I think we can forget about it since, well, Explorers of the Sky is likely to have both Pokemon in them, which means there is no meaning for a special event for Time and Darkness owners. And yes, I did just get asked the question again, because instead of talking to the guy, by accident I talked to the machine, which asked me the question again. It would have been weird if you could get the question wrong and fight the same trainer over and over. It would be really cheap, but thankfully they didn't do that.